Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. I just want to welcome you to our press conference, and I just want to acknowledge some of my colleagues, the engine to our conference, and that is Senator Liz Krueger, Senator Andrea Stewart-Cousins, Senator Toby Stavisky, and also Senator Susie Oppenheimer. And also with us this afternoon is Carmen Rao, Executive Director of the Women's Building and Holding Our Own, and also Alicia Borns from the Outreach Service Program Director of Equinox Domestic Violence Services. We're at a critical time in our lives, and also we're being joined by Senator Velma at Montgomery. There is a national war against women. It is being waged not only in Congress, but also in state capitals throughout the country, and it has no place, and I mean it has no place here in New York. Unfortunately, the Senate Republican Conference has refused to break ranks with their national parties and have continued to stand in the way of progress when it comes to dealing with women's issues and women's rights. Our state has had a proud tradition of progressive leadership, and it is our responsibility as legislators to continue that tradition. Standing up for women should not be a controversial issue. I call upon my colleagues across the aisle to join us at our public forums. And in the next couple of weeks, we're going to have forums that deal with issues that are the core of making sure that women are entitled to what they are entitled to, and that is their due respect. We're talking about issues dealing with pay equity. We're talking about issues dealing with women's health, and we're talking about domestic violence. These are but a few core issues that are important. It's not a movement. It's about what is right and what needs to be done, especially when we call ourselves the progressive state, especially when we're talking about New York State. So I'm asking my Republican colleagues in the Republican majority to join us at these forums, to listen to the women who have to make day-to-day decisions to determine as to the direction that their own families are in, but most of all, helping us steer a direction that we need to go to make sure New York still remains the Empire State. So at this point in time, I want to introduce some of my colleagues to come up and say a few words, and I want to bring in Senator Liz Krueger, the ranking on finance. Senator Krueger.
Well done.
And, oh, excuse me. I want to introduce Senator Parker. I didn't see Senator Parker.
Thank you. Yes, I want to introduce Kevin Parker, who is an additional Senate member and an honorary woman, along with John Sampson. I also want to recognize that we've also been joined by Diane Patterson, Vice President of Family Planning Advocates, and Carol Blowers of Family Advocates, who do such amazing work on behalf of women in reproductive health and contraception. So yes, there's not a huge number of women legislators here because there's not a huge number of women legislators, period. So part of our challenge is making sure that we have equal representation at the table. Because right now, as John Sampson just said, when it comes to issues that seem to be of the greatest importance to women, not only do we not get the kind of legislation we need passed in the state capitol and in the state, we actually find ourselves every morning waking up to some new story that seems to play off the theme of an attack on women and women's rights. The war on women is a term you've all heard because there really does seem to be a war on women. And as a state senator in the great state of New York, in honest truth, I'm horrified that people think it is okay to attack equal rights for women. People think it is okay to challenge our rights to reproductive health, our rights to equal treatment in the workplace and in our homes. So the first of the three forums that the Senate Democrats are inviting everyone to attend. We'll be inviting all, or we have already invited all 62 senators to come and talk about economic issues for women in the workplace. we still cannot get past in this legislature pay equity laws to require that women and men get paid the same amount for the same jobs. It is still true that women earn 73 to 77 cents on every dollar men earn in the same positions. And in fact, if you were a African or American or Latino woman, the statistics are much, much worse. It is true that in New York State, there is no law saying there should be accommodations for women who are pregnant in the workforce. Well, only 50% of the population has the ability to be giving birth to the next generation, and a huge percentage of us, women, are in the workplace, and the fact that we don't recognize that accommodations need to be made so that women can be the parents of the next generation and can keep their jobs with dignity is a critical issue for the state of New York. The fact that we don't even seem to want to talk about the importance of making sure that there is equality in the workforce and in the economy for women is enormously disturbing to me. We held a forum on minimum wage a few weeks back, and one thing that seems to have escaped the attention of too many people who don't seem to understand the importance of having a fair minimum wage is that the vast majority of minimum wage workers are women. So maybe if they weren't all women in these jobs, we would get more serious attention to living wages. So these are just 3 examples of why we need to be taking a much harder, more serious look and make a commitment in the state to do what needs to be done for women in the workforce, because it affects us all. It affects women, it affects children, it affects their husbands, it affects elderly parents who they're also trying to balance taking care of. The concept that there is not pay for the need to be absent from work, that there is still not in New York State a model for recognizing that there are family needs and family leave reasons to have a paid model, is just another one of the economic issues that overlap so many of the other issues we'll be focusing on in our forums. And now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Andrea Stewart-Cousins, who's going to talk about one of the other forums we're having. Andrea.
Thank you, Senator Krueger. My forum is going to be about women's health issues. It is clear that there has been a reluctance, frankly, in terms of the Senate chambers addressing women's health. You know, we talked about the fact that we couldn't get a resolution to deal with the unique health issues that women face. And now there is, I believe, a resolution that will be coming up sometime this month. But again, very, very broad strokes about women and health and cancer and weight and so on and so forth. We will have a forum on the 5th that will deal with the issues that women face. And certainly we will talk about New York's role in reproductive health, talk about New York's role in being a progressive state, the first, one among the first in the nation to legalize abortion, and talk about the realities that there's no reason that we cannot update our laws, decriminalize women who decriminalize abortion, as well as update our practices in terms of what the medical profession does. We're going to talk about some of the other legislation that we have pending, things that talk about access to screening for breast cancer and how difficult it is. We're talking about how funding, Medicaid funding, is necessary, and you need to have an opportunity to stay in the hospital after you've given birth for a period of time that's covered by your insurance. There are so many issues that are particular to women that during this health forum we will address. And so on June 5th, again, this will be a forum that we will ask everyone to attend, because there's a lot of misinformation about what we're trying to do with regard to reproductive health, and there's a lot of information that people will benefit from as it pertains to protecting women's health in New York. And that being said, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Senator Belmonette Montgomery, to speak about some of the other issues.
Certainly, one of the very, very important issues to women is access to child care and access to those supports that make it possible for women to work, make it possible for them to feel confident that their children are well cared for in educational settings. So that's another one of the issues that we will be addressing in the forums that we will be holding here. And I want to thank my colleagues for their leadership, and I want to particularly thank our leader for the fact that he sees this issue, these issues, as important to our entire conference. So we hope that people will come and participate and give us a full overview and allow us an opportunity to connect all of the dots as it relates to women's survival. There are too many of women who are heads of household who live in poverty, and therefore their children live in poverty. So we're looking to review all aspects of what policies mean to the survival and the well-being of women and families in our state. And let me introduce my colleague from Queens, Senator Stavisky.
What's your name?
Thank you, Senator Montgomery. There are some people on the other side of the aisle who say that we have manufactured a phony war on women. But there's nothing phony about women earning 73 to 77 cents on the dollar compared to men. There's nothing phony about state legislatures trying to criminalize a woman's right to health care and the right to make health care decisions for herself. And there's nothing phony about what's going on in Washington this week about the congressional Republicans who are dragging their feet on reauthorizing the Violence Against Women Act. The war on women is real, and it has significant consequences. And we're not going to stand by as an entire generation of progress is being threatened. And when we talk about equality, equality has to be for everyone, and that includes women. We stood here several months ago when my resolution was censored because I used what I called George Carlin's 7 words you're not allowed to use on radio. We were censored, but we're not going to be quiet. We're going to bring these issues to the forefront because equality means equality for everyone. So thank you for coming. I thank the advocates for their support. We're all in this together, and I'm delighted to introduce my colleague from Westchester, Senator Susie Oppenheimer.
What's her name?
What's her name?
It's just when you go to, when you want to contact one of your 4 children like I do, and I'm always using the wrong names, even though I think I should know my children by now. But, you know, what happened in North Carolina yesterday, you know, they may say there isn't a war out there, but it sure does look like a war. And I'm sort of torn. You know, I'm very happy to live in a progressive state, in a county, Westchester, which is a progressive county now. And I feel very positive about that. And particularly when I see what's happening in so many other states, which is so disheartening. Because I think Velmanette Montgomery and I were back on bills, I kid you not, 27 years ago, concerning pay equity, concerning reproductive health. And it's just remarkable that we're back here again. So while I'm happy I live where I do, and we certainly have much work to do with our government here in Albany, but then I look to other countries and I say, we really have not moved down that road at all. You look at countries like France and England and Germany and most all of the Western European nations, they take care of their mothers. Their pregnant women get time off when they're pregnant. They get time off and paid while they're staying home for 1 year. I mean, what a profound thought. If it is not important for us to take care of our children, particularly at the very earliest stages, I mean, what are we saying about our future society? My belief, even though I did chair the Education Committee a couple of years ago, which dealt with 1st through 12th, I firmly believe we have to get all children into kindergarten, and we really should be focusing in on birth to 5. That is when, and we have so much information on the development of brains in little children. And we just have to take a more realistic view of what's happening. We need wage equity. We need reproductive health. We need to fund our Planned Parenthood, which give basic health to so many thousands and thousands of women, not just reproductive health, basic health. And we're falling behind. And I think we're here to say it's time we stop this and we have to do something. And so I hope you'll all be at the various programs that we're having. Thank you. Okay, who is next up?
Senator Parker.
Senator Parker will be speaking next.
Senator Parker's an honorary woman. Senator Parker. Honorary woman.
Good afternoon. I'm State Senator Kevin Parker. I represent the 21st District in Brooklyn, which is Flatbush and East Flatbush, Midwood, Ditmas Park, Kensington, and Borough Park. And I'm reminded, as we are on the eve of Mother's Day, that my mother is a woman. And that as I look across my district, actually, statistically, over 50% of my constituents are women. And so how much more can we do during this time than, in fact, take care of those who've taken care of us? Probably all of you here at some time were taken care of by a woman. And as state legislators, our role is to do the best we can for our constituencies. And so I stand here and proudly dubbed an honorary woman, but shoulder to shoulder with my sister legislators to say that we are going to make sure that the people who have taken care of us for so long are also taken care of in our legislature. And so, again, I reiterate the call for everyone to join us at these upcoming forums to talk about these issues that are so important for so much of our population, and that we then quickly move to a legislative package to be done by the end of the year and signed by our governor to make sure that the women in our state are as protected equally as every man in our state.
Thank you very much, Senator Parker, one of our honorary women. If there are any questions, Senator Liz Kruger will take questions at this point in time. Senator Kruger.
No, I also, well, see, We have an additional fabulous woman senator named Ruth Hassel Thompson, and she couldn't join us today. And so we wanted to make sure, we also told you there was going to be a third forum specific to the issues of domestic violence and the impact on our communities. And of course, domestic violence isn't unique to women, but it's disproportionately an issue for women. And so a third forum will be taking place, I believe, May 30th, around the issues of domestic violence, and a series of pieces of legislation that are also being held up but are critical for us to move forward on. And it all ties together. So if you're concerned about the impact on children of poverty, of not coming from households where they have enough food to eat, they aren't sure whether they're going to have a stable place to live because of poverty. Now multiply that with the impact of domestic violence. Talk about the issues of being concerned about a woman's ability to stay in the workforce and take responsibility for herself and her family at a living wage. In fact, one of the common patterns among abusers are to try to make it impossible for the person who's being abused to be able to stay in the workforce because of the recognition that if they have economic independence, you have lost a major piece of control over them and their lives. And so your power is taken away by their ability to control their own economic future and their own decisions about can they leave, where can they go. So again, the war on women is real. And New York State, okay, this is great. We're not one of the worst states in the nation. I don't know about anyone else here, but I don't really want to go home as a legislator being able to proudly say, well, we're not as bad as X, Y, and Z state. But in 2012, we still seriously flunked the test of making sure that we have laws on our books that guarantee whether you're a man or a woman in your workplace, in your home, you're going to have equal rights to access to health care, equal rights to decision-making about your own body and your own life, and equal opportunities in the job market. And now we are happy to take questions. We are happy to take questions.
I would focus on getting these interviews. Is there a concern that some of these issues that you're trying to highlight kind of gets overshadowed when language like war on women is used? Is it slightly hyperbolic and wind up taking away from the issues that you're trying to highlight here?
Well, first off, we're all in politics. Well, maybe not everyone, but most of us here are in politics. And so when we watch presidential debates, and it's like a train crash, I couldn't not watch the presidential debates. And I see people running for the highest office in this country saying they actually don't think women should have equal rights, shouldn't have the right to make their own decisions about health care and their body, say that they think that all this prioritization for schools and children is a waste of government money. It's not hyperbolic. It's not like somebody was overhearing a conversation in the luncheonette that 3 people thought this way. These are people running for the presidency of the United States. And in fact, while the Republican candidate has yet to ultimately be chosen, for the record, every single Republican candidate for president in this country is anti-choice. So I don't think, as a woman, it's hyperbolic to say, oh crap, we're in real trouble here, right? The men who are running for president don't think our rights should be respected or protected under the law.
Can I add something?
Sorry.
Very quickly, you take a look at, sorry. You take a look at other states in the country, and you can see the war. Would you rather we call it an assault or an affront? To me, they're synonyms. It's a war. And you look at North Carolina, you look at the state of Florida, you look at the state of Kansas, and women's rights are under assault. To me, that's a war.
If I could just follow up on that. I mean, one of the, particularly when it comes to national issues, one of the criticisms of Washington is a hyper-partisan atmosphere. Does language like that help that, or does it inflame it?
I think, just to add to it, you know, I think what Senator Zavitsky said is best. Call it what it is. You know, it's an assault. It's a war on women. It's basic rights. You know, when you have a congressional panel who talk about women's reproductive rights, when you don't have one woman on that panel, what is that saying to you? You have to call it what it is. And you can't be afraid, and you can't hide behind words. This is what it actually is, especially when you have women who, when we're looking at the voter electorate, over 50% consist of women. Women are the backbone of the families, in some instances are the breadwinners of families. You know, and Senator Parker talked about you have Mother's Day and we honor them for Mother's Day. They don't want to only be honored for Mother's Day. They want to be honored every single day. Only thing they're asking for, treat me equal like you would treat everyone equal. Give me the same rights, the privacies and the privilege that you give to everyone else. You know, I'm not going to be afraid, because if you were afraid to say what it is, then all of a sudden it doesn't bring it to the attention that's needed. It is truly a war on women, and the women haven't created the atmosphere of war. It's others who have created that atmosphere.
Speaking more generally about sort of the way that the conference has tried to deal with a lot of these issues that it's felt blocked on, the playbook is clearly developing that it is sort of challenge the other side, ask for a hearing, be denied a hearing, be denied a resolution, and then hold forums. We've seen that just recently on minimum wage, on hydrofracking, on a number of things. Is this a politically effective way to go about it? Clearly it is not having the desired effect, I assume, which is to get these issues to the floor, but in your respective communities, and this is sort of a jump ball question, is this strategy effective politically?
I think the strategy is very effective, because if you look at, everybody talks about how functioning Albany is, but you know, it's what I call organized chaos. When you're stifling debates, when you are bottling up bills, basically when you are preventing the public, especially their elected officials, to talk about issues that are important to us. We are elected by over 300,000 people in our individual districts. They want to hear issues and concerns that impact them on a day-to-day basis. And when you have our colleagues across the aisle who stymie that, that's not democracy. You know, everybody talks about everything can be functioning in orderly fashion, but I call that, once again, organized chaos. Because when the people are not hearing what they want to hear, when they're not dealing with the issues that truly impact the way they live, that's why we are elected. And, you know, we are the vocal minority. Because if you look at things that happen in society and policies that have changed, it has been the vocal minority that has pushed the majority to make the effective change, policy-wise, to make sure that we are the voice for the voiceless out there.
Can I add something to that?
And I'm going to.
There's a parallel between what we're fighting today and the civil rights movement, because for years, separate but equal was the policy. And it wasn't until the Supreme Court in, I think, 1954 said separate but equal is inherently unequal. And I see a parallel with the women's movement of the last 10 or 15 or 20 years. We're supposed to stay in our place. That's not happening because we're still in the separate but equal, and I think we're going backwards. I think the generation of gains that we've achieved since abortion became legal in New York State, I think we're going backwards, and we're trying to reverse that trend. It's no longer know your place, but we're speaking out for the future generations.
That was the point I was going to make before we go to the next question. The fact is that New York State was the first state in the Union to legalize reproductive freedom and abortion. And it wasn't until 2 years later that the federal government did the same. And we have a bill now, Andrea's bill, which just updates what we said back in 1970. And that it cannot move, it just simply boggles the mind. because it means that we're going to be moving backwards, because that bill needs to be updated. And to keep talking about us as a minority, I believe we are, and I can be corrected, but I think we are 53% of the workforce. And I think as far as population, we are 51 or 52% of the population. So we are not the minority. And I mean, just think of what would happen if all the women said, we're not going to work today. It'd be pretty fun.
My question, I'd ask any of the members whether you thought Governor Cuomo was a part of the solution or part of the problem here, because we know that he's raising money for the Assembly Democrats to help them maintain their majority, and he's not doing, correct me if I'm wrong, he's not doing anything for you guys. And some people are arguing that he is tacitly supporting the Senate Republicans to try to keep them, to let them hold on to their majority.
I think that's a separate and not so relevant question for today. As Susie just said, we're here saying we're legislators, we were elected by whatever number of constituents were in our district, but we're here to represent 19.5 million people. And over half of those 19.5 million people are in fact women, and women aren't getting a fair shake under New York state law, and they're not getting a fair shake in their communities and in their ability to make their own decisions and to earn equal pay and to make sure that their children have quality child care and to be able to go someplace when they need and have a mammogram or a cervical cancer screening or reproductive health, and that this is much bigger than any individual's position on a specific question about politics in any given day. But in fact, technically the governor does have a role here, because the model that this state has in our Constitution are two houses of the legislature working deliberatively around legislation, and then a governor supporting or vetoing bills. And certainly the governor, within his power, has the ability to advocate and support particular bills. He has his ability to introduce programmatic bills. So the governor has a day job, which is to ensure that quality legislation that will protect New Yorkers and ensure that they live safely in their homes and in their communities and can thrive. That is all of our job description. So it doesn't matter whether we're assembly members, it doesn't matter whether we're senators, and it doesn't really matter what party we are and who likes who on what day. We have a structural responsibility. And again, I would bet if you asked almost any woman on the street in any town or community in the state of New York how things are going, and does she think that the laws are out there to protect her equally, that you would find an enormous number of women saying, we just don't think we're being heard. And that's really the fundamental problem that we need to address here.
Governor Cuomo had previously not really committed to throwing his full weight and clout behind any of the outstanding issues, minimum wage being one of them. But today he made very clear that his top legislative priority is going to be this overhaul of human services. Now that he sort of has a horse in this race, do you feel as though it would be appropriate to go to him to try and get him to back some of these issues that you're talking about?
Yes, I think it's totally appropriate to ask for the governor's support for any and all of the bills that we'll be discussing at our 3 soon-to-be events. We might want to invite the governor as well as other senators to come. Perhaps you would like to send representatives.